Thank you for watching Speak Chinese Global. Thank you for watching the December's live discussion session in Speak Chinese Global. Let's first start our session with the jingles. If you already know our jingle, please join me in singing the music. 开口说汉语好，同学水平有提高。开口说汉语，开口说汉语，开口说汉语，汉语学习很容易。Welcome back to Speak Chinese Global. Today we are going to start our new series of interest discussion topics. So today we have our first community guest. We have invited community leader Ms. Ma Li Wan from the Hmong speaking community, and we're going to have our guest speaker make a self introduction for herself.
Hello, my name is Mali Wang. I love to be part of this, and this is really interesting. I just want to explain about myself a little bit. I love to travel, and I love to eat international food around the world. I especially from Minnesota in America, so I'm glad I'm here today.
Thank you, Mali, for coming to this new discussion series at Speak Chinese Global. And then today, I understand that Mali, you are saying that you would like to learn something about food in China. Is that correct?
Yes. First of all, I would like to ask you some questions. I heard a lot of stories about different part of the region in China has different uh, ingredient or different ways of cooking in China. So I'd like to ask you some basic questions. For example, um, what is the difference between Beijing and Nanjing way of cooking, and where is Nanjing province anyway?
That is a very good question. I'm glad that you are interested in learning about some, not just the basics, but also like, some typical Chinese food. What I see here, like, since we are living in Minnesota, I assume you and I both have tried the Chinese restaurants here over and over. But what I notice is if I am specifically looking for a typical Chinese food from Nanjing, China, that is where I come from, that is my hometown, I find it very difficult to find the real dish that I grew up eating in China. So back to your question, what is the difference between the Beijing style of cooking and Nanjing style of cooking? That is a very good question. One of the things I will say is, like, let's just take the noodles for an example. I have had noodle dishes in Nanjing many, many times. And also, when I visited Beijing, I heard about a very particularly famous noodle dish in Beijing, that is the Beijing style noodle. So I tried that one also when I was in the city. And I noticed that the big difference between that particular dish, it's called 炸酱面 in Beijing, and that is 炸酱面 is basically the namesake for Beijing style of noodle dish. And then the difference between 炸酱面 from Beijing and the typical bowl of, say, 阳春面 in Nanjing, China, is you do not use the same kind of sauce. The 炸酱面 from Beijing is very famous for 炸酱, which is a typical, a very specialized kind of sauce used, and that is made and also used in Beijing, China. And in Nanjing, China, you don't even find this 炸酱, the sauce, anywhere, either in a restaurant or in a grocery store. So there's no way for you to make a 炸酱面 if you don't have the right ingredients available locally in Nanjing, you won't be able to make that particular um, dish that is so famous in Beijing, China.
Wow, that is so incredible. I did not know that is that difficult. So it's very special and it's very separated in when it comes to regions and different styles of cooking, right?
I think that is a very good observation that you get it right on. When you say it is like totally different from each other, that is definitely the case. For example, I really like a number of uh, authentic Chinese restaurants here locally in Minnesota, and they are all very, very good Chinese restaurants, but they are just not the same style as from Nanjing, from my hometown. So if I am specifically looking for something that is just in my geographical area, for example, if I'm looking for a typical dish from Nanjing area, our geographical area, I will be looking for a dish that is made of jellyfish. But here, with all those famous Chinese restaurants available in Minnesota, they serve dishes made of famous fish. They serve dishes made of clams. They serve dishes made of spawn and crabs. But you will never find a Chinese restaurant that serves a dish of um, jellyfish. So that is like that's because jellyfish is just a local, like it's so separated from other parts of China. It's a local typical dish in Nanjing, China.
Mm.
And then, in addition to that, the seaweed is another good example. We eat seaweed in Nanjing every day. That's part of our staple food. And then for the geographical area in China that serves seaweed dishes, you go from Nanjing going all the way north, go past the Beijing, and go all the way to the border of between China and Korea. So you have a really broad geographical area where you can find the same dish. It's basically shared throughout the northern part of China. But if you go down, like go south from Nanjing, China, then if you go all the way to the areas where, again, the seafood is famous for, seaweed is actually not considered seafood, but seaweed is something living in the sea. So it should be like readily available anywhere as long as it is a coastal area in China. Nanjing is a coastal area. But if you just go down south, all the way to the Guangdong province area and also like a province of Taiwan, that whole area is like, then you come to a totally different food territory. Seaweed is not served and it's not considered food by locals, so it's like you won't be able to find seaweed dishes that readily in a typical Chinese restaurant in that particular area.
Wow, this is something new that I learned today. So another question that I have for you, where is you Tao and what kind of food specialize in their provinces?
I'm very glad to hear that question. You are specifically asking for information about a good Chinese dish, youtiao. Youtiao actually that again that is it is considered traditional Chinese food and it is broadly consumed in China in a lot of places. So it's like again it is like you would expect this to be readily available in any Chinese restaurants here in America. But so far, I only found one Chinese restaurant that I have visited that serves youtiao here in America. So I realized that that is not something that commonly known here as a Chinese food. But if you go to China, especially if you visit Nanjing, China, that is where actually the story of youtiao comes from. Then you are going to find all Chinese people will tell you, oh, if you want to try some good authentic Chinese food, then try youtiao. This is one of the short-listed Chinese food you should try. The story of youtiao actually comes from a real person in history back in the South Song dynasty, the Nansong dynasty. So that is about 1,000 years ago, a real person living in China 1,000 years ago. And this person, his name is Qin Gui. He actually is a native of Nanjing, China, my hometown. He actually grew up in the same town or even the same geographical area of Nanjing as I did. But he lived over 1,000 years ago, so I didn't get to see who Qin Gui is. I heard about him in history. He was the prime minister of the Chinese dynasty at that time. So he was basically the most trusted person by the Chinese emperor during his lifetime. Given his political rank, everything you would expect him to be a very, very good and honest person. Unfortunately, it's not the case. He was one of the worst, one of the worst characters ever in Chinese history. So he is so bad that people actually condemned him, and later on, when the Chinese government, the regime, was overturned by invaders, basically, everything just was overturned, and the prime minister Qin Hui eventually was captivated. So he was killed by the court for, of course, deserving his death. But then even after his death, now here's the story. Youtiao is actually made in a shape of two twisted limbs. So that's basically, that is Qin Gui's body. It's like, you deep fry it in hot oil. And that
Wow.
basically is representing like you continue to condemn him even after his death. Like, his body is all gone because when he died, it was a pretty cruel way of captivating him. Like, he was not buried with his whole body intact, which is already some kind of a religious curse to his after death. And then when people make this twisted limb representing his body being deep fried in oil, that again, that is a religious curse, additional, like a more powerful curse to Qin Gui. So basically, he is just so bad that nobody likes him, and every time you eat youtiao, you basically like curse him one more time.
Oh, that is so amazing story. So in China, is there a some spicy food dish that is so spicy that you may not, a regular person may not be able to eat, but the Chinese people can eat? And is it more spicier than Thai food or what?
I know you are going to ask a question about spicy food because you like spicy food, and also I tried some of the Thai style spicy food. I would say, based on my experience comparing the spicy Chinese food I have had in the past with the acquired a new taste of Thai style spicy food, I would say probably Chinese food is not as spicy as Thai food as far as like the level of hot, the heat goes. But in China, there are definitely a number of geographical areas that is very famous for making spicy dishes. I would say top, like the top one I can think of is Hunan province. Hunan province is somewhere towards the west, but still in the middle of China. It is basically, if we're thinking of heartland of the continent in China, we're thinking of Hunan province. It's the heartland of China, and the whole province is famous for very spicy, tangy, spicy, and heat, like the kind of jalapeno type of heat food. So Hunan is definitely ranking number one in the Chinese list. Number two, I will nominate Sichuan province, which is within 500 miles west from Hunan. You just keep going west. And then number three, you probably will continue to go west from Sichuan province, keep going. So then if you go past the Sichuan province, you are getting close to the border, the western side, the western border of China. So by the time you reach Yunnan province, which is southwest from Sichuan province, I think you are reaching number three. And of course, since I'm thinking about Yunnan province, I will then just throw in equally spicy province, Guizhou province. Now, coming to think about Hunan, Sichuan, Yunnan, and also Guizhou, except for Sichuan province, I would say all the three that I have nominated coincidentally are known as a major concentration area of Hmong people. The Hmong Chinese living in China. You can find a lot of Hmong population in Hunan province for sure.
And in China, what do they call themselves?
Miao, they are called Miao people.
Oh, Miao. So in Chinese, how do you say it?
In Chinese language now, for the name of
The tribe.
the tribes, yep. So in the Chinese language, it's called Miao or let's see, 有苗氏. It's actually it comes like the recorded history, the recorded records written in Chinese text is saying that 有苗氏 are the descendants of Yan Di. Yan Di is the emperor of Heat or the Red Emperor. So there are two main tribes that come, like those are the two main sources of Chinese ancestry, the Yellow Emperor and the Red Emperor. Yan Di, the Red Emperor, is 蚩尤氏. And then in Hmong language, I believe the name for 蚩尤 is called 吉佑. So it's the same. That is the same name. It's recorded in Chinese text.
Oh, wow. This is very interesting. So the food, the cultures, and the provinces has its own specialty itself, and that's why it makes special of each own region special.
Yes, that is a good observation. That's very um, said, fairly said about like the food defines your regional culture. It's like if you are from that particular geographical area in China, you just grew up like with that whole package of your food, and it is so different from other parts of China.
Wow, that is so amazing. Thank you so much for your teaching today about regions and Chinese food. Thank you.
Thank you, Mali. Thank you for asking those important questions. Today I briefly introduced some like food and culture topics. Maybe next time in our same series of the interest discussions, we can add some more details. Maybe if you have a specific question about a Chinese dish or a specific style or maybe a region, maybe you can like make a list, make a comment to our recordings today, and I'll respond from there. Maybe I'll incorporate the questions from the audience to future interest discussions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for watching Speak Chinese Global. If you like today's episode, remember to make a comment below the videos, leave a comment, post a question, just like interact with the host. Thank you for watching today's program. Let's plan our meeting again in January. Thank you.